Kyuiin is a 1996 PlayStation 1 horizontal shooter. As far as I can decipher from the opening cinematic, two children are tasked with cleaning up their bedroom or possibly library where they study for cram school, and they decide to shirk their responsibilities and engage in a little bit of fantasy play, and imagine themselves riding their vacuum cleaners through a fantastical, magical wonderland that really brings the whimsy instead of completing their chores. Which honestly is as good a reason as any to mount a vacuum cleaner and fly to the right, blasting a plethora of really interesting enemies. This game has aged very well and is extremely pleasing to the eye. The backgrounds are all very well drawn, and they're not cluttered. One of the problems that I personally have with a lot of horizontal scrolling shooters is there's too much clutter going on, making it nearly impossible to see the thousands of bullets and projectiles flying towards you constantly. That's not a problem in this game. The backgrounds are all very well drawn, they're very pleasing to the eye. Each of the level is based on a fairy tale or story. There's a level where the boss is a frog that after you beat it, it turns into a prince. There's a level based on Little Red Riding Hood. Each of the enemies are nice, big, vibrant, brightly colored sprites, which is absolutely wonderful. I played this game on my PlayStation 3 and on my PSP, and had absolutely no problem seeing what was going on the smaller handheld screen, which is a good thing. I had a lot of fun playing this game all over town on my PSP. This is the perfect game to waste a couple of minutes while you're in a waiting room, or if you have to ride the bus to work or school. It's a good game that you can start and stop, get right back into. Really enjoyed it. This being an older PS1 title, there's absolutely no analog support, so you do have to use the D-pad, which isn't a problem. The D-pad gives you plenty of control, and I had absolutely no problem piloting my vacuum cleaner through this two-dimensional space, blasting the many, many creative enemies that I encountered in this game's fantasy world. The difficulty does ramp up gently, and it does get you used to the game before it starts getting difficult, and that is an absolutely wonderful thing. Once you do get into the later parts of the game, you will find out that you have infinite continues. There was one boss I found particularly challenging. It was a large flying tomato, or a group of tomatoes rather. It's a 5-stage boss fight, and I could get through the later parts of the boss fight just fine, but the second stage of the boss fight I kept having difficulty with getting the pattern down just right to avoid the mighty tomato onslaught. But eventually I got through it, and the infinite continues were helped. This game is published or brought to the PSN by Monkey Paw Games, which is an absolutely terrific company. They've been putting out tons of amazing import PlayStation 1 games, and you really do get the feeling of importing a game. The software manual, the game itself, everything is still in its native Japanese. However, if you're having a hard time trial and erroring your way through the software manual or through the game itself, you can simply log into monkeypawgames.com, look for the game you're playing, and there's translated menus and some much needed help. I needed to increase the amount of lives that you got from 3 to 5 so that I could get past that dreadful tomato boss. And eventually, once I got past that tomato boss, it was pretty smooth sailing from then. I was just having a bit of difficulty with Boss Tomato. I really enjoyed the core gameplay of this title. A lot of horizontal 2D shooters are just leagues beyond my level of expertise, and I find them quite cumbersome to get into. This being a game that honestly looks like it's for a younger audience, is not a bullet hell shooter. It will not destroy you and frustrate you and make you quit in 10 minutes. I ended up playing this game non-stop for at least a week before recording this footage, and had an absolute blast. I was playing it on my PlayStation 3, I was playing it on my PSP, I was playing this game all over the place. Eventually, I did get to see the ending of the game, because, hey, infinite continues. But also, there's a level of depth to the game that I really appreciated. Your character is riding a mighty and fantastical vacuum cleaner. The vacuum cleaner functions as it should. The hose on the vacuum cleaner will absorb most of the small projectiles fired by enemies, so it functions kind of like a shield. There is a desperation move that unleashes a mighty blue blast from the front of the vacuum cleaner, where you're basically invulnerable for a short period of time, and the beam will destroy pretty much anything that's in front of you. Most of the time I would use that during boss fights. If you get hit, your vacuum cleaner takes damage and you lose the hose. After that, after you get hit again, you will die. To avoid that, you can unleash the mighty blue beam, and generally, during that time, a health pack will come floating by, and you'll be able to at least get the hose back. And if you're lucky enough, a weapon upgrade will come, and you'll get upgraded firepower and the hose back. Adds a little bit of depth to the game, and a little bit of strategy for boss fights. Now, there's a bar on the bottom of the screen that gets depleted as you use the Mighty Blue attack. And there's 3 different levels of Mighty Blue attack, each one weaker than the last, but still offering the invulnerability for a period of time, which will let you get the hose to the vacuum cleaner back. And hopefully, you will be able to absorb a couple of the weaker enemies and refill that bar. I really thought that was interesting, that you could suck up those enemies and use that to refill all 3 levels of the Mighty Blue attack. That was really interesting, really appreciated that. And once I got that down, it really made the game deeper and more enjoyable. I really had a good time playing this. So if you've ever been intimidated by horizontal shooters but would still like to give the genre a try, this is a very welcoming entry-level game that starts out easy enough but becomes a challenge before you're through with the game. And that's something that I really appreciated. I think this is a very well-designed game, and I thank Monkey Paw Games for bringing this to the United States to give people something to ease their way into horizontal shooting, which is something that in premise I always liked, but have always found the games to just be too dang challenging. So if you've got $5.99 in a PlayStation Network account, give this game a download. It plays wonderfully on the PS3 and on the PSP.